Welcome to the Design Build Institute of America's Design Build Delivers podcast. I'm Kim Wright at DBIA's national headquarters. As the use of design build continues to grow to nearly half of all projects delivered, so has the need for legislation that ensures communities have the ability to tap into design build's full potential. Design Build delivered incredible projects during the COVID era and will play a large role in delivering Infrastructure Investment Act projects nationwide. And legislative authority is vital. Today, we talk to DBIA's Vice President of Advocacy and Industry Engagement, Louis Jenny, and Richard Thomas, DBIA's Director of State and Local Legislative Affairs, about why 2022 was such an historic year legislatively for Design Build, and also what lies ahead. But before we get started, DBIA offers our special thanks to USCAD for partnering with us to bring you this year's episodes of Design Build Delivers. Thanks to Richard and Louis for joining us for this recap of all of the legislative and advocacy work we've got going on at DBIA. This was an incredibly busy year on both fronts, both in the state forum and in the federal as well. But advocacy has always been a huge part of DBIA's mission, going way back to day one. Let's talk about a little bit about the need for public authority, why that's important, and why that has fueled so much of what we've done in the states. And then we also want to talk about FAR on the federal side. But let's start with state authority, Richard. That's where you live and breathe.
Well, I guess I would start with, without design build authority, there's no design build projects. It's really as simple as that. And, our job is just to make sure that public and private owners have that opportunity to use whichever delivery method they see fit. And we've really seen a lot of growth. I mean, in 1993, when DBIA started, there were only 2 states that had design build authority. And when I started 14 years ago, it was about half the states. And now we're up to 48 states with design build authority. So, we keep plugging away, we keep making progress.
Yeah, on the federal side, there's been broad authority for 25 years, and that's a good thing. So we're mostly making sure that we maintain that authority, and it's really more the advocacy comes in encouraging the federal agencies to use design build, to use it better, to adopt best practices, the whole litany, and to sort of educate them that there's a lot more leeway in the FAR than most of them think. I mean, most of them think that they're very limited in what they can do, and this whole agencies that are just afraid of change, and really the FAR basically says, unless it's illegal, you can do it, and so it's really just kind of the advocacy is a little bit more on that side than necessarily with Congress on big things. Congressional things tend to be a little bit more. At least design build specific, tend to be a little bit more focused, a few things here and there, a couple pieces of legislation, things like that. So
we always say change is hard, and getting folks out of that traditional design build mentality seems to have been challenging, particularly on the federal side.
And even if you get them saying we're going to do design build, getting them out of that mentality is still it's still in there and deep down in their soul. So.
doing design build, but it's running exactly like it always has running not doing design build. That sounds really
bad
right.
projects out of it. What a surprise.
Design build done wrong. Yeah, we'll talk about that too. Right. So give us a little bit an idea about what it looks like to be on our DBI's advocacy team, a little kind of a day in the life. I mean, it varies depending on what's going on. We had some really slow stretches there with COVID, which we'll talk about, but things have really been picking up again now. So what is it like for you guys and your team? Louis, let's start with you. I mean, obviously with infrastructure investment, it's been a very busy stretch.
Day in the life. Is Congress in session? That's a different day than the other kind of days. A big part of what I do is keeping track of what Congress is doing. They're sort of on an annual cycle with the the Defense Authorization Bill. Defense Authorization Bill is just a huge must-pass bill that a lot of stuff gets stuck in there, so we're always keeping an eye on that. We work with a lot of our coalition partners general contractors, architects, engineer folks. And there's usually a couple little things that get snuck in there, and there are this time around. I shouldn't say snuck in there. It makes it sound...
No. You know exactly what it is. You can be honest. We know.
It makes it sound so devious.
Sometimes you have to sneak it in.
We snuck that in a few sentences. Nobody knows. But there's usually one or two things in there that we are advocating for and sometimes trying to get away from. So you're always keeping an eye on that. Appropriations, the same thing. That's it's just sort of an annual cycle.
Never-ending battle.
Right, yeah. And it's just always happening. And, more and more of this stuff, because politics is what politics is, happens right at the end of the year. Like it all used to happen before, and then they'd all, like in a year like this, it's an election year, they'd all leave town and we'd be done. But now everything gets pushed off until after the election and it happens real fast. So just keeping an eye on that. A lot of what we do too, a lot of what I do is working along, as I mentioned a minute ago, is with coalitions. We're working along with folks that's on broader construction things, on broader regulatory things. So we're always trying to keep in touch with them, what's going on with them. I'm always trying to keep in touch with key staff people, just so there's no surprises on this defense stuff, appropriation stuff, things like that. The infrastructure bill was such a huge lift last year that everyone's kind of shifted over to implementing that, which is a good thing, and that's going to be coming. And we're keeping an eye on the appropriations for that, even though it's mostly appropriated, but not completely appropriated. So.
Well, and it's important, too, I think, for people to realize that just as design build teams have to collaborate, contractors and engineers, and we do that here, you do that at DBIA in collaborating with all of the various other organizations, of which their members are also DBIA members. And it's important that we have a constant relationship with AGC and AIA and all of those organizations, that we all are all in the same boat, hopefully the same boat together.
And it's nice now that we're sort of coming out of COVID world, that we're back being able to get together and see each other face to face and like have lunch with people and do all those things that just makes all that coordinating so much just more effective, just easier. So.
Speaking of getting back together, Richard ended up in COVID because, of course, he travels all over all 50 states, grounded for a good stretch. And then all of a sudden it seemed to immediately go away. You were back in the air and back hitting the States again in person. Is that good or bad? I guess that's better,
it's good.
Right?
And it's funny because while the whole pandemic time was a challenge, it also created opportunities for us. In fact, the last 3 years have been the most successful years we've had from a legislative perspective, because I think with everyone grounded, it kind of leveled the playing field, and I think it made legislators a little wonkier. They had more time to go through bills and digest things, and every day I'm either on the phone or getting on a plane to meet with local officials and legislators that are either trying to expand design build authority or they're trying to codify best practices, because every state is at a different stage of design build. But we really, I think the thing that was really cool is, as bad as the pandemic was, a lot of folks saw design build as part of the solution. Mm-hmm. And in fact, a lot of design build projects were accelerated during the pandemic rather than being on hold. And I think it's that kind of flexibility with design build that really, that's why we're the only delivery method that didn't have a shrinkage in their market share.
Yeah, I mean, they literally saw the value of speed to market and all of the things that we have said all along design build can deliver.
Are you interested in sustainable design and construction practices but concerned about profitability? US CAD, a Zero company, helps forward-thinking ENR top-ranked AEC firms mitigate risk and drive profit through digitalization using Autodesk AEC technology. To learn more, contact uscad.com/DBIA for a free 30-minute consultation. That's uscad.com/DBIA.
Tell me a little bit, I mean, you mentioned it briefly. 2022 particularly was an incredible year for us legislatively.
To give us just the rough strokes, I mean, there was a lot of legislation in 2022.
Well, we had over 100 bills passed, and we had the highest success rate we've ever had, 83%. And we had a record number of bills passed in California and in Illinois. We had a record number of progressive design bills passed. And I think the exciting thing about that is we've seen over the last 2 years, we've seen 7 different states that have, passed either passed design build legislation or progressive design bill legislation, or they're working that through the rulemaking process. So, that's really exciting to see, and I think that particularly with as projects get bigger and riskier, more and more owners and practitioners alike are seeing that progressive gives them a safer alternative.
Yeah, I mean, and like we look back on the federal side in the last 2 years, it feels like a lot of big important pieces of legislation passed, and they did, including the infrastructure bill. But yeah, the rescue plan and the Inflation Reduction Plan that had some federal money in it too. But it was a pretty limited amount of time where the stars aligned and there was a need and things happened. I say that as a long way. I say I'm always envious of Richard because things actually happened on the state level.
Be careful what you ask for.
And on the federal level, you're like, all right, we're not.
We've been talking about it.
We'll
for
be
a while.
lucky if we get like a defense bill this year. We'll be lucky if we get like I was talking about, the appropriations done. And unfortunately, I think we're heading into another phase like that where there's going to be a whole lot of not much happening in Congress for a while, which is unfortunate.
Year, like you said.
Pardon?
It's an election year.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you said.
And I think the stars are going to go. Well, yeah, it only seems like things get done when these days when all of Congress is in one party. It's funny, we were talking about the authorizing design build on the federal level. That was in 1996, and it was at a time when the president was one party, Congress was another party, and I was doing a different job in a different place. And it was an incredibly productive time. It was right before the election, and it was just because they saw it in their advantage to get stuff done, and it's just not that we haven't really seen it since. No, and it's disappointing, but it's like I said, the stars did align in the last 18 months, and a lot of big things got done. And now it's time for us to start preparing for the next time those stars align. So,
and implementation is a big deal. I mean, that money has started to already flow.
Yeah.
And then it comes up to us to try to keep up on reporting on what's happening now out in the states and communities with that money.
Correct.
And we'll try to do that.
Yes, and we will do that.
We'll try to do that too. I mean, I think it's important for people to realize that as much as the feds have been doing, like you mentioned, the feds have been doing design build, it is a matter of elevating that discussion. I mean, there was new State Department legislation this year. We're seeing agencies come to us in growing numbers for custom training, which shows that they're truly embracing.
Yeah, we had a symposium this summer, our federal symposium. We had a lot of the big agencies there and talking about how important design build is, about how, with all these federal dollars coming down in the next several years, how they're going to use that, and how design build is going to be an important part of that, and wanting to get educated about it and doing it properly. And a lot of them, I mean, it was all the core, the GSA, NAVFAC, it was all the big organizations that, the big agencies that do it. So it's going to be a challenging time, and I think their challenge is going to be as much just, is staffing and getting it all under control and just, but there were at least a few of the folks who were sort of saying, I couldn't imagine trying to do all these projects that are coming down, that we're having the authority for under the old way of doing things. Like there's just no way you could do it. And so that was very encouraging, a little scary too, because it does just mean that there's going to be a lot happening in the next couple of years. But not congressionally so much, I don't think. But maybe, you never know.
One of our board members, Laura Stagner, I think she said this to all of us. She was at GSA during the Obama reinvestment plan. And she said she felt like this investment plan could truly take design build to a place that there's really no way we could have imagined, both in the states and at the federal level, for just that reason, what you just described. It's what has to be done in order to make the most of this money that's flowing out there in such huge amounts.
Absolutely. I mean, we're really, I think, going to be behind the eight ball just to get all these projects delivered. They're getting bigger and bigger. Even local projects are getting bigger and bigger and more complicated. So I think as both owners and practitioners are trying to balance that risk, I think design build is and get these projects out on time. There's no other way to go.
Yeah, that's definitely what was being taught. I'm repeating myself now, but that's definitely what I sort of took away from the symposium. What was being talked about at the federal symposium was just like, if you're not doing, you little federal agency aren't looking at design build pretty carefully, in 3 years when you have to deliver X, Y, and Z, you're going to have a challenge. Mm-hmm. So,
you mentioned, Richard, briefly the progressive and the rapid growth that we're seeing. There was also extended authority in New York and Illinois, not progressive, but New York we've been watching closely for years and years and years because they were kind of an outlier for a long time, and now they've gone gangbusters.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that because right now there is a pending QBS bill in New York for New York City, which would if passed, I think this is a bill we're likely to see carried over next year. This would allow them to move forward with progressive. Illinois was one of those states. They went from their DOT having no design build authority to having authority and progressive. We've had 7 states over the last 2 years that have moved forward on progressive. And the thing that's interesting is where we're seeing the most movement is on the transportation and water side. The water side is no surprise. They've kind of led the pack in progressive design build over the last decade, but the DOTs has been they were the most resistant. It was always a best value world, but now as projects are getting bigger and riskier, that owners are recognizing we have to bring these contractors in at the very beginning of the process and have them working side by side with the designers.
And we've talked about the mental shift that you have to do best value design build. Progressive design build is that on steroids. So there's been a big learning curve, both for you guys advocating and then for us as DBIA trying to educate owners that they know how to do it, right?
Yeah, and I think one thing that will help in that regard, though, is the DOTs have been doing a lot of CMAR projects over the last 10 years. There's been a lot of growth there, and that has helped. In fact, that's actually helped some of those owners feel more comfortable making that switch, and they see that as a progressive as a better alternative to CMAR.
Do we have any surprises coming down the pike next year, do you think? What does next year look like, let's say?
Well, I think we're gonna see some of the trends continue. I think we're gonna continue to see more expansion at the municipal level. That has been one of the sectors that each year, as the states have gotten authority, that is trickling down. I think we're going to continue to see more states bringing forward progressive design build, I think particularly in the transportation sector. And I think you're going to see more refinement of design build laws where we're codifying design build practices. And the other thing I think you're going to start to see more, and we've really seen this a lot in California, is where owners are starting to earmark monies specifically for design build projects. In California, over the last 2 years, they've earmarked over $1 billion worth of funds specifically for design build projects. I mean, there's still going to be those projects that come through the regular formulas. But to me, that says a lot. We're not seeing, $1 billion of earmarks for, where we're seeing design bid build projects or CMAR project. The fact that they're putting that in, I think, really says a lot. And I would say the other sectors, I think we're seeing a lot more movement at the local schools. That has always been kind of a cutout for a certain segment of the industry that's been very, very resistant to design build, and I think we're going to see more and more of those bills continue to come down the pike.
In addition to all the aggressive advocacy for design build, I know that you've both at various times had to fight back against efforts to tweak, change, limit, edit that it puts us on the defense in various places. We went through a big one of those in Iowa, which is one of our 2 states without. But generally, that's not happening as much now as it used to, right?
Well, the one thing I would say is it's getting easier and easier to knock these bad bills down. Certainly I think Iowa and North Dakota are outliers. I mean, in fact, in North Dakota, I think one of the biggest federal design build projects is underway now. So those same firms that can't do design build at the state level, they're participating on those federal projects. But I think the other thing is we've had several bills that have tried to put, raise thresholds and put other minor restrictions, and we were able to knock all of those down this year. It's really been, as you know, Kim, we've seen one of the trends we've seen is design build projects are getting smaller, and we, every year we have different stakeholders that try to raise those thresholds to cut out a niche for them. But we've been very successful at educating owners that that's not a good idea. That should be your choice. It shouldn't be the industry telling you what size projects you should use. And we're also starting to see some of those sunsets go away. We were successful in knocking 2 of them down this year. And, that's something that I think is important. It's the only purpose it serves is a lobbyist retention.
Money for somebody.
Yes.
Louis, what do you think? Go ahead. No,
I haven't really seen in recent years, things coming up that we've had to swap down quite so much. And part of that is, I hope, it's just that we're out there because we're out there talking to folks as much as we can. It's and keeping in front of the right people who are making the decision, the right staff people like that. So things. I'm not aware of any efforts out there to undo what we have on the federal level. Usually, what happens is things come up, sort of unintended consequence. Somebody's trying to do something, and and they just haven't
trying to help.
They're trying to help me.
And the language actually does
right.
work.
They're trying to help me, and they're not. But even that, you haven't seen as much of, which I think is a good thing, and also just testament to the work that we do, and getting the word out there and promoting things. So as far as looking forward, I do think that we are looking at a time where at least Congress isn't going to be getting as much done. It's going to be a little bit more of a rebuilding time. There were some pieces of legislation that were bouncing around this year that we liked that were different people were trying to get organized and in line to be made part of these larger infrastructure bills that did pass, and that didn't happen. But that's fine. It's sort of a process you have to go through, and sometimes just the process itself helps.
Just the fact that those conversations are happening benefits the
I think so,
overall
yeah.
conversation. It definitely feels like our tide is rising, and teams are going to be busier than maybe they can even handle, as long as you guys continue to be so effective on the advocacy side, right? I'm not sure. I don't want to say the sky's the limit, but it just seems like we are definitely at a place in our history where things are going to be continuing to grow.
Yeah, well, for some reason, just before I came in here, I was looking at some of the research again about, I guess it popped up in an article I was reading, some of the research that we did. And the numbers are just, they speak for themselves, how it's growing and the path that we're on. So, yeah, it's an exciting time to be part of it. And there'll be interesting things going forward, no doubt.
Agreed, and I'm really looking forward to this year. I'll make 3 bold predictions. I think.
Oh, there you go. We can hold you accountable.
We are going to, within the next 2 years, we are going to pass progressive design build legislation in New York and Florida, and I think we're gonna make some cracks in Texas. While Texas has been doing design build, they have a lot of severe limitations, and I think we're making some headway, and I think that next year could be the year
That's
that we
awesome.
break things open.
That'd be very exciting. Yeah, that'd be very cool.
We're gonna mess with Texas.
Yeah, you're right.
I think that's a perfect segue to, we hope everybody will come to our conference and expo in Vegas in November. We will be talking legislative authority and all things advocacy on Friday the 4th at 9:15. So it's a wonderful way to begin that last day of the conference. So we hope everybody will just, if you haven't registered, do, because it's time. It's going to be literally the timing couldn't be better.
It's going to be a party.
A record number.
It always is. All right. Well, thanks to Richard and Lewis for this, and we are looking forward to next year for sure.
Thanks for having us.
DBIA's advocacy team is already gearing up for legislative sessions next year, and we urge you to reach out to your local region about getting involved. You can find region contact information at dbia.org/regions. And don't forget, it's not too late to register for the 2022 Design Build Conference and Expo in Las Vegas. Go to our website at dbia.org/conferences. And again, thank you to USCAD for their support of Design Build Delivers. Find out more at uscad.com/DBIA.